Hello Lord of the Rings fans, my name is Ryan the Cyber Hobbit, and it's time for another Weta Workshop statue unboxing. This is the Masters Collection Salvation at Mount Doom, a depiction of Gandalf on Gwaihir, saving Frodo and Sam from certain death as Mount Doom erupts because of the destruction of the ring. This piece serves as the climatic end of Frodo's journey through Middle-earth, beginning with Gandalf and Frodo, escape off the road, the Dead Marshes, which was my first piece, and finally ending here with Salvation at Mount Doom. As typical for the Masters Collection, included in the box is a certificate of authenticity signed by both Gary Hunt and Richard Taylor, as well as a very artistic representation of Mount Doom erupting. How cool is this? According to the specs, the statue is approximately 119 by 101 by 53 centimeters, making it by far the largest statue that I own, and I believe the second largest statue Weta has ever created. Upon opening the box, you'll find the parts of the statue are divided into two layers of styrofoam, the top being solely dedicated to the wings and feathers of Gwaihir, a testament to the grandeur of this statue. I'll be leaving the feathers in the box for now. We'll get to why in a bit. On the second layer, you'll find the base and our four characters: Frodo, Sam, Gwaihir, and Gandalf, as well as Gandalf's hand. And because it makes sense, let's first take a look at the base. A rather large diagonal chunk of Mount Doom, with the rock Sam and Frodo will be laying on, as well as another large rock that Gwaihir will go into. Flowing down between the rocks is the river of molten lava, and I've gotta say, it's extremely well done. Most of the time I see anything sculpted that's fire related, there's always something off, but this looks excellent. It really looks like lava. Small, blackened and shiny rocks spread throughout the flow of the orange, red, semi-transparent molten rock. It looks great. The rocks themselves are also well done, variations of colors and texture, and visible layers of the segmented rock. I also like the creative choice to have certain parts of the rock extend down onto the black base. A sort of breaking out of the frame look. The rest of the base is the typical satin black that you'll find on most Weta pieces, as well as a USB-C port and button to activate the LEDs that are within the base. Though we'll turn these on later once the rest of the statue is put together. Moving on, next let's take a look at Samwise. So as far as the actual face sculpt, I think at this scale it looks close enough to Sean Astin for my liking. From the side I can definitely see our Samwise. And the face paint I'd say looks good, except for one sort of obvious thing. There may be a little too much ash applied to his nose, sort of making him look like a little bear or something. Perhaps some ash just landed on his nose off screen between when they're laying down and are rescued, so I guess it's not that big of a deal to me. The hair looks well done, definitely the right amount of curly locks and the right color. Since he's meant to be laying down on a rock, the backside is flattened out, which totally makes sense, but it is kind of funny looking. The details on his clothing, though, are amazing. A tattered and having traveled to Mordor-esque look. Dirt and grime everywhere. You can easily see the texture on his suspenders. The bleeding from his shoulders there from when Gollum bit him. Perhaps it's a little bit too much blood, as later on when they're on the rocks, it's not near as prominent, but it's still a cool detail. The sword sting that's attached to his waist from when he fought Shelob looks great. You can see the little details on the scabbard. His pants are properly dirty and weathered, and his hobbit feet are gross on the bottom like you would expect. And though I can see a bit of texture that would be the hair on his feet, perhaps it's a little too skin-colored, but honestly I don't really remember if Sam's feet have blonde hair, so this doesn't bother me. Overall, I think Sam looks great. Not perfect, but good enough for the scene. And now on to Frodo. So considering this scale, this looks almost perfect. My lighting is different, but this is very close to what we see in the films. From all angles, it looks like Elijah Wood, and is accurate down from the placement of the cuts on his face to the individual hairs on his forehead. Again, a great hair sculpt in color, lots of distress and different highlights. On his back, he's got an F in case you forget it's Frodo. His clothing looks great, all dirty and raggedy. Clear individual buttons and wrinkles in the fabric. Again, visible texture on his suspenders. His pants are all worn with holes and lots of weathering. Dirty hobbit feet from trekking across Middle-earth, and this time more visible distinguished hair on his feet because it's painted darker. And yes, of course, you can see his missing finger, still bleeding from when Gollum decided to have a snack. Just like Sam, this is great, and more than good enough for this scene. There are dedicated spots for Sam's feet in the base to help with the alignment, and then it's just a matter of lining up the key on his back. And obviously the same for Frodo, a slight indentation in the rock, and then lining up the key. It does seem just a tad loose, but the key is big enough, and the statue is big enough and weighs enough, it'll never fall out. Just them laying on the rock alone looks pretty great, and probably could have been a statue on its own, especially with some glowing LEDs under it. Now let's take a look at Gandalf. Having made many other Gandalfs over the years, I think Weta's got a great eye for how to make the face sculpt look like Sir Ian McKellen, and this one is no exception. It's not perfect, but it's clearly Sir Ian. If I'm trying to be picky, I will say he doesn't have the same facial expression Gandalf has in the scene, but I still think it's fine. The sculpt of his hair looks great though, giving the sense that it's flowing in the wind. As you would expect, his clothing looks wonderful, lots of decorative patterns and textures, yet with just a bit of wear as he's come from just being in battle. If you're curious why he has no hands, it's because one hand comes separate so it's not easy to break when mounting him on Gwaihir, and the other hand is missing because it inserts under the feathers of Gwaihir. And yes, I might have had a mild panic attack until I realized this. His cloak is very dynamic and similar to his beard, giving a sense of movement as he rides the greatest of the eagles. It has lots of visible texture and is painted well, not just one solid color but slightly weathered. Attached to his waist is the elven sword Glamdring, and it's sculpted and painted well with its blue leather hilt. His boots look great too, sculpted with tall laces and plenty of weathering. If you've been curious about the scale, yes, this Gandalf matches exactly to the latest series of miniature statues Weta has been producing. So even though Sam and Frodo are the focal point of the scene, I don't think they're the focal point of this statue. That's our next character. But before we take a deep dive, let's first finish the assembly. At the bottom of Gwaihir is a large metal key that slots into the hole of the taller rock on the base, and it feels extremely sturdy once in place. The left and right wings are pretty obvious where they go. The left has a blue mark and the right has a pink mark, and again, once inserted, they feel very sturdy. If you remember earlier, I left a lot of feathers still inside the styrofoam, and if you notice, there are the same blue and pink marks there. Something extremely important to remember is to never mix up the order of the feathers, as they aren't numbered but do have an exact order. These are the primary feathers of a bird's wing, and the order of insertion, starting at the top of the wing, is right to left as they are sitting in the styrofoam. Here's a simple image I made to hopefully help explain it. To add Gandalf, there's a dedicated spot and keyhole where he snugly fits into place. I also found adding his hand after he's in place was a bit easier than before hand. And now that it's all assembled, let's finally talk about the main event. The greatest of the great eagles during the Third Age, Gwaihir the Windlord. Where to even begin? The sculpt on this thing is simply out of this world. His head is extremely detailed with what I believe are glass eyes that look very real. The beak is basically perfect. I have no idea how I could begin to even give any criticism. Its sharp hooked shape is polished to a sheen, and the upper mandibles look great and are painted well with slightly dark hues of orange around the edges. And the feathers. It's no joke when they mention Gary Hunt was sculpting feathers longer than it took for Frodo and Sam to complete their journey. It's sort of insane seeing this in person. I can't really describe just how great the feathers look. I'm sure there are, but it's hard to spot any two feathers that really look the same. And this thing is absolutely covered in them. They all have their own pattern of barbs and barbules that each sort of catch the light differently, and you can see spots where other feathers used to be but have naturally fallen out. They're all carefully layered and oriented to give a lifelike depth and realism, and the paint is wonderfully done with tiny highlights on various barbs to give it subtle variations. This is truly impressive. Though what's probably the most impressive is the wingspan. Before I even added the other feathers, this thing was already a giant, but once I put it all together, it's kind of crazy. And I used to think that Smaug had big wings. This thing is tremendously huge. And although you can see where the wings join to the body, you have to really look for it. There has to be a seam no matter what for practical purposes, though I think they did a great job trying to blend the two together. Also, let's talk about his feet, since those are the things that are actually doing the saving here. The sculpt looks great, just like any bird I've ever seen in real life, with a paint job that really emphasizes the layering of the scales. And the talons are sharp and curved and are painted with a deep obsidian-like color that really adds a great contrast to the yellow on his feet. His right foot is lined up perfectly to grab Frodo, with presumably another eagle right behind him to grab Sam. And while we're on the subject, it's not specifically mentioned in the books, but I personally love the fan theory that Gandalf sent the third eagle specifically for Gollum. And now the last thing to take a look at to fully enjoy this statue in all its glory is finally plugging in the power for the LEDs in the base. And once on, the lighting animation programmed into the LEDs really brings this thing to life. It's always hard to film LEDs, but in person, this really looks like lava. The stream of various single LEDs being turned off to create black spots really sells the idea of the movement. If you know me, you know I'm a big fan of LEDs and what lighting can do to really help elevate something, and this statue is a prime example of that. The lighting that reflects off the rocks and up onto Gwaihir really brings this piece to a whole other level. So, some final thoughts. What do I think of this piece? I love it. Do I like it more than my other Masters collection, the Dead Marshes? Yes. Do I like it more than my other 1/6 scale Weta pieces? Yes. Do I like it more than my all-time favorite piece, the Prime 1 Studio Sauron? Yes. This piece has everything I wanted it to be. Salvation. Truly a perfectly chosen word to describe the moment when Frodo and Sam, having accomplished their impossible goal of destroying the ring, have run out of options and submitted to their demise, only to be saved by one of the truly and most good forces in Middle-earth, Gandalf riding the majestic Gwaihir. Salvation. From concept to execution, this piece has everything. A pivotal moment from the story, wonderful and carefully thought out sculpting and planning, an amazing paint application, a somewhat impossible task of creating a weightless looking giant eagle preparing to save the main characters of the story we all love. Weta, you outdo yourself every time it seems, and this one is truly a testament to what your team can create. While not absolutely perfect, it still satisfies everything I hoped it would be. I give this statue a round of applause and a 9.9 out of 10. If you're a statue collector, I can't express just how great this looks in person. It's so hard to really capture it for what it is. If you have the opportunity, you must own this piece. Thank you for watching and taking this journey with me to review my new favorite piece of my collection. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor and hit that like button and consider subscribing. Having recently passed 5,000 subscribers, I'll be doing another giveaway soon, and you don't want to miss it. Until next time, bye bye.